Hello and welcome to another video from the Fantasy Legion. Got Sean with me.
Thanks, Al. How are you doing?
I'm all right. A lot better than some of the players in camp, but we'll talk about them.
Yeah. Oh, you don't have a shoulder tweak, a back injury, or a lower body injury, do you?
I've got many injuries, mate. Right, well, let's just go through some of the camp news, actually, because there's a lot going on. People need to know, because it will affect drafting, or likely affect them. Obviously, having an injury now is not good news, even if they're not that serious. You know, they can reoccur or become serious in time.
Oh, it's already affected drafting already, hasn't it? In our case, as we've drafted early, it already has an impact where people now are getting more edgy.
I mean, one of the leagues we have, but that's part of the charm of it. Right, let's go through them then. So Tyreek Hill, obviously a major one, relies on speed to get open, and he's hurt his hamstring. That's really
it's nasty. Yeah,
and that is
They're often, the thing is, again, you have to go back to, with all these injuries, is go back to, what normally happens medically. We don't have a lot of details, so we don't know how serious the strain is.
I mean, he did jog off, so it wasn't one of those really bad ones.
Yeah. So we can assume it's a tweak. So we can assume it's a tweak because he went off under his own steam. So he's more your day-to-day kind of injury, I would suspect. So I think realistically he'll be okay. The trouble is hamstrings re-aggravate 50% of the time. We know this medically. So it's one to watch, because if they limit his practice reps next week, say, particularly as you get towards the end of next week, then you're not really going to know how well recovered he is from this hamstring injury. What you need to see is him actually on a full workout, go through a day, no problem, no reoccurrence, great, then he's fine.
Well, I think unless they're really confident, I don't see why they'd actually risk him at this point. They're bound to look after him. He's one of their star players.
You've got to get Camp. No matter what any of the players say, no matter how great a start, no matter how many games they've got under the belt, you still have to have camp experience of what I call banging shoulder pads. You've still got to get out there at game speed, or at least close to game speed.
Game speed. That's a problem. I mean, he's pulled.
Well, they will need to test him again, because if you put him under the heat of battle and that hamstring, hasn't been tested, he could go down very quick in the first game, and it could be much more serious the next time.
That's worse. And then, it's depending on the severity of the sort of grade of hamstring strain.
So I'd like to see him at least. Yeah, I agree with that, Al. I'd like to see him at least get
in many cases. So it's just there to be wary of, isn't it?
I just want to see him get a proper workout at least once or twice before the season starts, so that we can actually see him running at good speed. And if he's running okay, no issues, no reoccurrence, then great. But you're not really going to know till very close to kickoff now.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of people we have lost for the year. I mean, they're not massive fantasy players yet, but a lot of people like Jalen Hurd, San Francisco. Lost him for the year. Josh Oliver, a tight end for Jags, we've lost him for the year. He's a pass-catching guy. Could have done something, obviously, now 2 injury hit years.
Jalen Hurd's loss, Al, obviously affects, some of the, because the wide receiver core in San Francisco, that helps a few people perhaps get more chances. So that's in one to monitor, that's for sure.
And who have they signed, Sean? You're one of your old favourites. Your favourite bloke from the ex-Rams guy that they got paid a lot of money. And he's
not the mighty midget.
Yeah, Tavon Austin signed with them.
So, yeah, that's what you do. You see, if you lose your 6-foot superstars, you bring in the mighty midget. And I'm not saying he isn't good. He's a very good gadget player, but he is exactly that. He's a gadget player.
They signed Jerome Brown as well, who used to play for Arizona. And the other Arizona guy, they signed him as well, that used to sort of knock about for a bit as like their 3rd and 4th wide receiver. They've signed him as well. So it's like...
It's a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mess. That's not good. It's not good when...
But they've lost Debo as well, because Debo, he had a foot injury. It's very possible he's going to miss 6 weeks already on PUP with his foot injury, and that's got a high chance of reoccurring as well. So,
well, the thing is, they're saying that they think they can get ready for week 1. I'm telling you, he's likely to be 6 weeks on PUP. I mean, that's the reality of it, because no matter what they say, it's very difficult to come back from that foot injury and just kick on from where you left off.
Well, what you got to do is you've got to factor that into the price. If you think you've got a team that can, hold out for 6 weeks, worst case scenario,
and
have Debo to push you into the playoffs and beyond, remember he's got to get to football speed as well, even when he is fit to play.
Well, I've kind of done something similar in a live league where it's a very big league, so don't get me wrong, it's 16 teams, so I've taken a shot in that league with the team I've got, which I think is quite good, of taking Antonio Brown, because my belief was that the Browns will pick him up, and under the recent news of what's happened with Des Bryant, I suspect that's even more the case now. I really believe they'll take him. So, yeah. Sorry, the Baltimore Ravens. Yeah, sorry. I really do think they'll take him. And it's a hunch, it's a guess, but it's based on a certain level of logic. And and that would be it's just thinking ahead, like Al said, really.
Yeah, I mean the logic. I mean Lamar Jackson obviously said it was real fun to throw to Brown in the off season. He'd been thrown to him, hadn't he? So Harbaugh didn't really rule it out, so we'll have to wait and see with that one.
And he's got his penalty, 8 games, so it's a big risk. I mean, you have to sit a man on the
best case scenario. So
you have to sit a man on the bench for 8 weeks on the off chance he might play is ballsy, but it's fantasy.
Stay out of trouble for 8 weeks. Well,
can he stay out of trouble for 1 week without freezing his toes off? Who knows?
Talented guy. It's a shame that he's had some. Well, I think you'd have to call them mental problems. So let's hope.
I'd say he's had some mental breakdowns. Is probably the best way to describe it. Some poor judgment.
It's not nice to see anybody that, and I just hope it's not connected to any sort of head injuries that he got.
Yeah.
Through playing. Obviously, there's a couple of other big players. Obviously, the Broncos lost KJ Hamler for a couple of weeks. He's going to sit out. He's another speed guy. He's similar to sort of Ruggs, a speedy slot guy, and they've shown some of the routes, if you're American, that he was running were amazing. That he was showing some real separation with those routes. They were amazing.
It's very interesting, right? So you get a lot of these speed guys coming into the league. You look at the amount of kind of these sort of injuries that are occurring right now at camp. It's very similar for speed guys to all pick up knocks and bangs right now. So it's, again, not surprising. Good speed, interesting player. Again, a bit of a gadgety player. Player could play in different positions, which I like, but clearly already picked up a knock, which is concerning. I suspect the NFL game for him, I'm worrying a little bit about him now, whether the game is just a bit that one step too far and he just is one of these players.
Say that. I mean, he was performing well before he went down with injury. So
it's not that he can't play at the level out. Maybe the injuries and the recurring ones. You see a lot of players who are good, they show a lot of potential and just never ever put it together. They're constantly injured. I just wonder if he's going to be. I'm just curious whether he's going to be one of those players at the moment. It's not a huge fantasy loss, but it's a shame. It's a good player.
I mean, it could be because he was starting to play with the ones. I mean, he started with Deshaun Hamilton and Tim Patrick.
Yep.
And now it's started to be Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. I mean, Jerry Judy's been doing some good work as well, I understand from what I've been reading. Lots of touchdowns from Drew Lock. So,
encouraging.
Definitely a partnership to keep an eye on. Melvin Gordon, obviously, they signed him in free agency. They use the word tweak to rib, which is an odd phrase, but
it actually does. It does happen. I've done something similar myself in the past.
I don't know.
Well, you've got the cartilage round the ribs, and if you get a sudden jolt, the cartilage will move out of position, and it's an incredibly debilitating injury that can last a good couple of weeks. Because even though it can be massaged back into place, it's really bruised, and you imagine trying to run with effectively a bruise hanging over your lung, really. Very difficult. It's not long-term at all. It's not something that he won't recover from, but it really is for a running back. I mean, quarterback's different. You've only got to drop back 5-7 steps. It's not too bad. A mobile quarterback would be affected by this, but in his case, being a running back, main running back, that does give you a slight pause for concern early doors. That it should be okay. There's enough time between now and the start of the season to see him recover from it. But it could go into the first game where they have to limit or monitor his reps a little bit. But I don't think it's a long-term thing. And I'm pretty certain that he can ice it up, keep it as best he can. You can in some cases, not always the case, depending on where the rib injury is. They might be able to strap it to hold it a little. But it's not something you ideally want as a running back. So, yeah, they are awkward little injuries, those ones.
Okay. Okay. I hate to bring this up, but it's AJ Green again. He's been sitting out. He's still sitting out with a hamstring injury. He tweaked the other day. They said it's precaution. But again, it's AJ Green. Why is he always injured?
Well, look, the experts, I keep seeing these experts. I love these experts. Thanks, guys. You're doing a great bang-up job. Look, AJ Green hasn't been healthy for a very long time. So at what point do we actually admit that the guy can't stay healthy anymore? The age has caught up. He's a great player. Look, when he's on the field, we all know he's elite. I mean, no one can take that away from him. He's a special player. I know that. But the problem is he just cannot get on the field now. I would have massive concerns about what kind of contribution he's going to do. If I'm honest, what I would want to do as a coach there is really limit now how much touches in camp he actually really needs, given he's a veteran and he's a really good guy, apparently, by all accounts. Great team player, really good off-season workouts he's done. He's done everything he can do to put himself in good position. But I just think maybe he really tries extra hard. And he's one of those rare players where I'll actually say, you need to take a foot off the gas here and just stay healthy till game time. Get me to game time with you. And let me give you. You're going to have to monitor him a lot. So I worry whether, this is again the start of another year of frustration if you're an AJ Green owner in fantasy. But I know when he's out there, I actually want him to be out there because I've got a share of Tyler Boyd in one league, and I really want AJ Green out there because I want him to take away the big coverages to help my man out, So I actually do want him out there, strangely. But if he's not, then fair enough. Maybe my guy gets more looks. But yeah, I don't really see that as a profitable road to great fantasy success personally. So I'd like to see him out there, but I am concerned about his opportunities for this year. And another, will it brew into another bigger injury in a few weeks' time? Because they've not monitored his reps, which is the worry, actually. I've seen him working with the ones all the time before this. I don't think it's necessary. I've been watching the camps really closely this year because we haven't got, it's kind of classic, there isn't that much you can do. Normally I'm out doing other things, but I'm able to watch and monitor them, and they're more interesting this year. And he worried me. He was working a lot, very hard. I don't think it was necessary, just from a coaching perspective, that is.
Well, I think there'll be more precautionary with him now. Another player who amazingly is injured is Sammy Watkins. I mean, why? I mean, he's never injured him. Groin injury.
Another lingering one.
And Tyreek are out at the moment. So, for you, does that make the sort of McCole Hardmans, the DeMarcus Robinson, does that make them slightly more valuable if they get to, or are they just?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, the thing is, what this does, right? This is doing, and what this should tell you is, obviously everything in fantasy is always about two factors, like we've always said. The first one is, opportunity, which absolutely trumps everything else. So if you've got the opportunity, it will trump talent. You could be a okay player, but if you're getting peppered with targets, you've got to become a very good asset to your team.
Especially in that offense as well.
Especially in that offense. So those players definitely get an uptick. But also the guy that his value just keeps climbing because of everything that's going on in the team and the way they're utilising him is CEH. Every time I look at him and what they're doing with him and how they're actually operating him, I am not going to be at all surprised that this kid gets 15 touches on the ground and 5 to 7 looks in the air every game. I mean, it's that capable, and they may well need him because you want to bring Travis Kelce into the centre of the field and open him up down the seam, you've got to have somebody defense really has to, go against. And you don't want easy dolly passes out in the flat to this guy taking space, that's for sure, because he'll kill you. One mistake is all it's going to need. One misdirectional cut, and he's got a great chance to pull off chunk yards, which is what Kansas City absolutely do all the time. Like you said originally back a few videos ago where you said, it's literally 3 passes down the field and touchdown. Absolutely. But they're now missing a couple of key assets that we're not sure how that's going to make what the team's going to look like a little bit. We're not worried about them long term or anything like that. Even Sammy, I'm not even worried about really long term. It's just the guy really is often, missing games. And that again is part of his criteria. That's who he is.
Okay. There's a couple of, there's other injuries we need to talk about as well. Devontae Adams has been lower leg injury. I mean, he missed three or four games with a turf toe or whatever you want to call it.
This is actually more. This is more serious.
He said it's not. I mean, he is back in training, so this one isn't. Yeah. But it's just something to be aware of if it is.
Yeah, it's more serious because of when you look at their team and you think about who else is there. This guy, they can't afford to lose. And I'm not saying the injury is anything to worry about. And there's no threat not to start week one or any of those things. But it's just once you get these kind of injuries, because he's had a couple of little knocks in the off season before. Is basically what's happened. It has a tendency. You see this a lot where he's really under the strain. He's a player that's really, really under. It's not that he can't produce. We all know he can, but Rodgers has got. This is why. Again, it comes back to they didn't take anybody in the draft, and look what they've got around the camp. And you've got big concerns here about what kind of pieces are available for Rodgers to. And no, there's no way Jordan Love is ready to come in and play. There's absolutely. I've watched him at camp, and he's 3 years out, 2 to 3 years away right now.
That's probably the plan anyway, isn't it? It's not.
Well, it might be, but Rodgers might have a lot to say with that next year if he decides to move on, and he might. It's possible. He's been surrounded with no talent, and who knows what this year will bring. So, yeah, I would be very worried if I was in Green Bay now. Your season may well hinge on it. Aaron Jones done well in training camp. AJ Dillon has caught the eye of the coaches, which is what we thought. Those kind of things.
Specimen, doesn't he?
He's a funny guy. He did a really. I do like his personality. It's very infectious. I like people like that when you're out training. The media picked up on the fact that he had massive legs. These massive thighs. Massive thighs. So what did he do? He asked the equipment manager to find the smallest pair of shorts he could, and he put those on. I love guys like that. That's just so funny. And there he is out there running, and he's barely keeping these shorts on. It's so funny.
So laughing every day at work is part of the thing, isn't it, really?
It is. He was like the Hulk. He looked like the Hulk in those things.
All right. Okay, well, let's move on to the Eagles, because the Eagles have got real issues.
Yeah, this is more serious, because it really affects me.
The news is what it is, I'm afraid. Alshon Jeffrey, likely, as we've been saying all along, to miss 6 weeks. No time to return.
Well, let's big up the draft guide here. Let's put the draft guide into full focus. Listen, if you haven't bought our draft guide, you know what? This has been highlighted beautifully in the draft guide, and it's another reason. How many reasons do we have to give for people to take a look? Do look at it. I will leave a link in the comments, but by God, another successful chunk. It tells you an awful lot in there about what you should do. For this video, no surprise to us, is it, that this guy is looking very ropey for the first few weeks of the NFL season again?
I think that's pretty. It's probably the worst kept secret around.
Yeah.
But you also add that they've got problems in the backfield. Corey Clement's actually the number one running back. They've been talking it up because literally there's no one else. Boston Scott's injured. He's got a lower body injury.
Well,
Miles Sanders has got a lower body injury. He's week to week. Well, Miles Sanders is week to week. We need to start. The season.
We need to start with those two. I think. The first thing is that Boston Scott's is day to day. So let's be totally honest. The logic is that within the week he'll be back at training, no problem. And by all accounts, it's very precautionary. Fair enough. Miles Sanders, though, that is a much more. And ironically enough, I've got him in a live league now. Yeah, I have to touch it on here because it's really worth saying it. We draft early because this is what we do. It's the risk of the game. There are other people who say never draft early, but we've got so many leagues. There's no way you could fit him in if you tried to draft the last day before the end of the season. Now, even if you do draft the last day before the end of the preseason, somebody's going to get injured week one. That's what happens. So you've got to live with it. Now, unfortunately for this guy, week to week is very serious. It's not simple at all. There's 3 weeks before the start of the... Well, not even that really, but we'll say 3 weeks. 3 weeks before the season kicks off. That's it. That's his recovery time and he's week to week. There's a very real chance he doesn't start week one in the NFL. You just got to be honest and say that. If you look back to last year and look at the way that these week to weeks went, it's not a pretty picture. There's not many success stories in them. It's not nice.
It's just something to be aware of. You've got to draft him knowing that is a potential outcome because you can't go into these things blinkered thinking I love Miles Sanders. I'd love to own. And before he got injured, I was going to take him quite high, but now it does put me. The backup, Boston Scott, he's only day to day, but he's got a lower foot injury as well, a lower body injury. And you just don't know. These are, if it reoccurs, Sanders could be out for 6 weeks. I mean,
look, all bets are off. In all truthfulness, all bets are off right now about how he will return. If I'm being honest, this is how I'm already looking at it with that team. This is seriously how I'm looking at it. I'm predicting he's out for 6 weeks. I'm predicting he's not there at the beginning of the American football season. I genuinely believe I won't see him for the first month of the season. That's how I've had to account for it. He's my first pick.
I wouldn't worry that much.
I'm being. I
think he'll start. It's more reoccurring injury. I'd be worried about with him.
I'm being deadly serious. That's how I've had to plan it.
You're a pessimist, John.
I like to look at worst case scenario and then work back, because it's the best way of thinking about your team. Otherwise, if you don't think that way, then, you're not being realistic, because, we can all... Blind optimism is wonderful until you hit the season and, you actually don't have a plan B. That's why I drafted a certain way. I can still put a team out there. It's not ideal, but that's life. You've got to...
It's not out week one. Who are you playing week one, Sean?
Unfortunately, it's you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Against Christian McCaffrey. I'll tell you what, actually, mentioning Christian McCaffrey...
Don't start jinxing him.
I tell you what, I'm already a bit concerned. I'll tell you why. Why are they putting him out on punt returns? Something to think about. Why are they doing that?
That was worrying. I was like, why would you I bet they're not allowed to touch him, though.
And the best bit was, as well, I noticed they put him out there on punt returns. He was just catching a ball. He wasn't running or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not going to let him...
it was just catching them, and he dropped a few, and I thought that was quite funny, really.
Good.
I thought, for God's sake...
I don't want your punt returning.
Yeah, Coach, get him off the field. I mean, even I'm saying that for you. I don't want to see him get injured. I mean, God, wouldn't it be funny if he was? It's a nightmare. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, the Eagles' backfield be... Boston
There's so many injuries to talk about.
Boston Scott...
You need to know about them. You need to know.
Boston Scott's the clever play right now, the cheap man for early season. We'll have to see how Miles Sanders gets on. That's the reality, I think, in fantasy at the moment.
Right, Dallas Goedert.
Another one of my players. Doing well, eh?
He's day-to-day with an upper body injury. But, again, the Eagles have got a few going down, haven't they? So...
Well, again, this has happened a few years in a row. So one has to ask the question about this. I always say this every year. There's always a team, and the Eagles seem to be that team under that focus. It can happen one year to any team, and it's just one of those things. But if it happens every year, we're seeing a lot of injuries from the same team. There's something not right in the setup of that team. Every practice, there's something not right. It needs to be looked at.
They have lost a few, haven't they? I mean, Alton
certainly have.
He's always injured.
Injuries happen at practice. It's the unfortunate, it's one of the things I hated as a coach, right? When you get an injury to a player, particularly a good player at practice, you have to question yourself, and you take a step back.
That thing as well, wouldn't it? Drop-itis or whatever it was.
You take a step back as a coach when there's an injury at practice. So you really should, and you need to evaluate whether everything was done, that was just one of those occurrences, or whether there was something that could have been done differently. And it's a really hard thing to honestly examine. And there are times where you look at it as a coach, you think, yeah, we need to modify the way we're doing things. I think the Eagles need to look at that very carefully. I don't know if they're not. I'm sure somebody must be thinking about this, because it's a real worry.
Yeah, it is. Okay, unless you're a Dallas fan, of course. But
yeah, then it's not a problem at all. Carry on.
Yeah, but for fantasy purposes, you've got to keep an eye on these things. Right. Okay, who we talked about? Todd Gurley, he was walking with a noticeable limp, and he had a sleeve on his leg.
Blimey, yeah.
But they said he was still running with good speed, so,
Well, I mean, the guy did well last year, and he had a limp in the off season, and all the clues are showing decline. I just wonder, what we're going to see from him this year. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to judge. He's a real gambler's pick this year. I mean, maybe he gives you a really great year because he's in a very spread offense, and well done for picking him. I'm very worried. I'd rather target the backup, to be honest.
In our draft guide, we've got a cheeky sleeper in there that we can't talk about because it's in the draft.
No.
Guide. If you want to find out who it is, you know where to go.
Yeah, and it is cheeky. Yeah, it's a good one.
All right, who else haven't we talked about? So, yeah, he's a bit worrying. Nick Chubb's in the concussion protocol.
This, again, is more serious because he's been in that protocol. He's been in it a few days. It's not like, Normally they last 2 or 3 days. He's been in it for about a week now, hasn't he?
Yeah, and so he was the sort of victim of a high tackle at practice, which, I mean, why is that going on? I mean, that your own team injuring your star running.
Yeah, and you see the thing with concussions, and I speak with experience on this. I've had 2. Right, again, this is awful, isn't it? The first one I recovered from very quickly, probably within 48 hours. I was probably okay. I wouldn't say I was game ready, but I was all right. I was better within 2 days, and within 3 days, I didn't really notice anything. And what you tend to feel when you've had a concussion is, initially the symptoms are you feel sick, nauseating, disorientated. Sometimes you get, very forgetful about what you're doing, don't even know what you're doing. But the first one was minor.
Oh, you still got it.
Thanks. Cheers, Al. Yeah, well, the way I'm drafting, they're all going down with injuries.
Still got that,
but the second concussion was much more serious, and I think with the symptoms that he's got, that means he's had other concussions. Seriously, that's what it would indicate to me.
I mean, that's what they say about Brandon Cooks. He's had a few concussions now. It's worrying. And the second one, he'll probably take more time to come back. So if he was to get a second one, it could be 3 or 4 weeks,
and they can reoccur. This is the thing. The thing about them are, and this is again true because I can only give you real life events on it. Is the first concussion I had happened literally in the very final game of one season. So I had all the off season to work with, and it was no problem. The second concussion, which was more serious, came a year later. So they are lingering. There's no doubt. I honestly, genuinely believe that they are connected. And I think science is pointing towards the fact that these concussions are connected. And the more you have, the more damaging it is because you are giving your brain a jolt. Your brain is going one direction and the rest of your body is going in another. So it is like being hit in a car crash, 30-mile-an-hour car crash. So they are serious. Yes, a lot of steps have been made by the NFL to improve this, and good and rightly so. But when you have a player who's picked up one like this that's lingered a week, no matter how precautionary a team are, that is a concern. That means to me, would indicate he's had previous other concussions. And like you say, this could well be something to very monitor.
And they're being, cautious with it. But it's not good news. Whichever way you cut it, it's not good news. It's just,
look at again. Maybe might be worth mentioning because it's Chubb. Draft Guide's got another sneaky little piece in it on this. Look at the bold prediction list.
Well, yeah. I mean, get down by it. I mean, if we missed anything, get down in the comments and let us know because, we love the community. We always get some good comments. It's always interesting to read them. If you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Buy the draft guide if you want to support the channel. You don't have to. If you need to eat before buying it, that's fine. We're just about
perhaps eat it after buying it. That's another thing you could do.
And we'll try and get Sean in the concussion protocol because we know he's still struggling. So
thanks, mate.
Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see. The next one will be from hospital. So
very likely.